Hi, I'm Ray Poynter, and we're going to be looking at the first 100 days of ChatGPT and its impact on market research and insights. I'm going to start with a little bit of what is ChatGPT, and I'm sure most of you have got a pretty good idea. Then I'm going to talk about the survey we did and the 268 responses about what are people doing with ChatGPT and what are they planning on doing. I'm going to discuss some of the ethical issues. I'm going to run through a simple example of ChatGPT, and then I'm going to mention a really useful book, and we can move into Q&A. So what is ChatGPT? Of course, I asked ChatGPT, and it told me, I am a ChatGPT, a large language model. That's a phrase we're going to hear a lot of, created by OpenAI, the company that owns it. I use artificial intelligence and natural language processing to understand and generate human-like responses to questions and conversations. Essentially, I'm a computer program designed to simulate conversation with humans. You can ask me almost anything, and I'll do my best to provide you with a helpful and informative response. So it's not a search engine, it's not a database, it's an attempt to mimic human conversation. It was launched to the public on the 30th of November 2022. Systems like this have been around for many years, but this has broken through into general awareness, and that is about 100 days ago. All of this has happened in 100 days. It got 1 million users in the first 5 days. That's the fastest take-up of any new platform ever on the internet. It's currently adding something like 100 million users per month. It's also running into real bandwidth problems, and it's really slow, and it's hard to get a new account for the same reasons. Currently, it is free to use, but with a limited bandwidth. So back on Tuesday, I signed up to the Pro version, which is $20 a month. And for that, you can now get ChatGPT 4 as well. Collectively, or in a sort of wider sense, ChatGPT is a form of generative AI or conversational AI. They're trying to simulate human conversations. And we get this phrase that I can see that Andrew Jevons is on the line. I know that he is fond of using, the stochastic parrot. The stochastic means it's statistical, and parrot is that it repeats phrases that other people use. So language models like ChatGPT, they don't understand what they're saying. What they do is they take your question and they code it so that they understand, that they interpret what they need to do next, and then they devise the most probable answer, and they do it one word at a time. So here's an example. I asked ChatGPT, describe market research in 12 words. The first thing it thought was the probable answer was collecting. It then ran its algorithm and thought the next most probable word is and. The next most probable word is analyzing. The next most probable word is data. And it came up with collecting and analyzing data to understand the market and its opportunities. Is that the right answer? No, it's the sort of answer that humans give. Quite often when humans give answers, they're not the right answers. So it's mimicking the process of giving human-like answers. It's not a bad answer. It's as good as many, many answers I see to that question. But there is no sense of right. It's really looking for what is typical, what is the likely sort of answer that would be given. So we ran this survey. Big thanks to Question Pro, one of our sponsors, who loaned us the use of their software platform. We collected data from around the world, and we got a lot of responses. But before I share those responses with you, I am going to launch a poll. That's the one I want to launch. Simply asking whether you have used ChatGPT. So that should be on your screen now. Oh yes, lots and lots of people are voting. And while the numbers keep going up, we will just hold fire. We have 286 people voted already. I'm going to give it just a little bit longer. And now we will end the poll and have a look at the results. Share the results. And you should be able to see the results, I think. And what we can see there is that 32% of people have not used ChatGPT yet. 52%, half, have used it, but not for live projects. But this is quite interesting. 1 in 6 of the people on this webinar have used it, and they've used it for live projects. And that's quite interesting. So let's see what the wider data set is going to show us. Okay, 76% said yes, they've used it. And 24% said no, they haven't used it. So we've got similar sorts of numbers. It was a more binary question in terms of the survey that we ran. If we look at that by different types of insight and research professionals, it's really surprisingly similar in Europe, USA, Canada, and in other regions. So Asia Pacific, Latin America. All around that sort of 73 to 81%. The only group which might be higher, and remember, we've got 2 sources of bias in this data. The people who did the study are people connected with NewMR who were interested in the question about ChatGPT. And if we look at supplies research industry, it's only 35 people. But amongst those, 97%. I think that's quite interesting, that it's perhaps a little bit higher in those people who work for the software companies, the panel companies, the people who supply things to our industry are perhaps the quickest to pick it up. So that's potentially interesting. We asked people mostly open-ended questions, and we said, well, what have you done with ChatGPT so far? And I do, like I always do, I used our new tool, WordCloud Plus. Please do give it a try. And had a quick look at what the basic terms that were being used. And you can see discussion guides, survey questions, desk research, secondary research, idea generation, all coming through there. And then I take the word cloud and I go into the data and I get a more coherent picture. So I only use the word cloud as my starting point to go into the data. And so what have people done with it? Well, a lot of people have just been exploring and playing with it. They've been asking it about movies. They've been asking it to write haikus. The fascination with haikus, I'm not quite sure I understand over other forms, but a lot of people are doing that sort of thing. A lot of people are asking it questions they know the answers to, because then they get a sense of whether it's right or wrong. In terms of research, people have been using it to help design research projects. So creating questionnaires, creating screeners, discussion guides, personas, and these sort of things. Conducting desk research into a topic. So asking a question and getting some information back. Be careful. We're going to talk about this some more. ChatGPT does lie. They're called hallucinations, but they're lies. And they're really plausible. So you really need to double check even more than trusting your Facebook friends. Summarizing text, including articles and interviews, people are using that quite a lot. Aiding brainstorming, coming up with concepts to test, new methods of working, ideas for strategies. Some of the people talked really quite long open ends about how they had used it in strategy development, and they were then using that strategy internally to change their business. To generate code for analyzing data, so people are using it to generate Excel macros, Python code, R code. I haven't seen anybody yet who's using it to generate Fortran code. To generate copy, so you can ask it to write a blog or an article or a proposal for you. I'm seeing both in the comments we've got here and in the discussions I've had, a lot of people are writing pitch documents. They'll get ChatGPT to write the first version, and then they will take that and they will modify it because it's much better, they say, than staring at a white sheet of paper. That phrase, better than staring at a white sheet of paper, probably got mentioned 3 or 4 times in there. to translate text from one language to another. So that is something else that people are doing. I don't actually know whether ChatGPT on the inside works in multiple languages. I've had a session with the Japanese Market Research Organization, JMRX, and we did a whole set of tests in Japanese, somebody in Japanese testing it in, and it ran really slowly, but it ran just as well. So I have half a feeling that it's translating the Japanese to English, processing it, taking the answer and translating it back to Japanese. But its translations are sometimes good and sometimes not, the linguists tell me. We then asked people, how well did it work for you? And they said, good. About 2/3 of people said good. Very impressed with how it's helped to write option statements for questions. About 1/4 were equivocal. So if we take this, okay, about 80% accurate, generally very bland, lacking in personality, requires heavy rewriting. And so that's not good, it's not bad. And when people tell me it was 70% accurate or 80% accurate, that is kind of problematic. If it was 70% of the way to the finished answer, that's fantastic. If 7 out of 10 things it said were right and 3 out of 10 things were wrong, that's appalling. So it's a bit of an ambiguous sort of phrase. And there were about 1 in 8 people said that it was bad. They'd tried it and it really wasn't what they wanted. Here's one of the phrases from there. It's rubbish. I think the industry is all over it because it's a new thing. The industry is certainly all over it, and it certainly is new. So the main experiences that people reported back is that it was saving time and effort. Almost nobody, there were a few people who said it produced a finished product, but not many. The vast majority of people were saying it gives you a start, but it doesn't finish the job. And I think that is where the consensus appears to be at the moment. And it makes mistakes, or it fibs, or it makes hallucinations. So I asked it, who is the market researcher Ray Poynter? And it came up with some fairly believable stuff. And it came up with 8 books that I had written, 3 of which I have written, 7 of which I haven't. Sorry, 5 of which I haven't. And it came up with a long list of universities. Only one of those universities have I taught in. And it missed the other 2 universities, which I have taught in. So it's incredibly plausible. It's trying to reflect conversation. So as a tool for accuracy, it's not dependable, but it does speed things up. I was looking earlier today for how can I find the incidence of cars worldwide, and I asked ChatGPT, where should I look for this data? And it came up with several suggestions. Some of those worked really well. So that was quite a fast way of going through that. It's limited at the moment to pre-September 2021 information. Now, that's not often a problem for getting background information, personas, what sort of questions should we ask? Would you help me understand these open-ended responses, etc.? But of course, it would be a problem for some of the things. You will have seen in the news, I imagine, that Bing, the search engine that we mostly don't use, is going to have a ChatGPT front end to it. And that's going to potentially make it the most powerful search engine around. Google and Bard, of course, would beg to differ. Bandwidth is limited. You can only upload a small number of open ends. So something around 200 statements, I think, which often is not enough to do that. So it's great with small lists, but actually so is reading them. For long lists, you play a few games like, and here is another list, and here is another list, but it doesn't always play nicely. We then ask people, what are they going to do next? And the most common answer is don't know. So that, I think, is really encouraging. Now, we asked this to everybody. We asked, what have you done, to only the 200 people who said they'd done something. But we asked, what are you going to do next, to everybody, the whole 268 of them. There's a group I've highlighted in red, which are the non. Well, I'm not going to do anything with it yet or ever. A lot of don't knows, but I've highlighted in green the things that I see really as the essence of what's going on. People looking to save time, using it for idea generation, using it as a starting point, generating ideas, generating first drafts of questions, doing some desk research, but not to get the answers of how many cars are produced by each country, but asking questions like, where can I find the answer to the question, how many cars are produced? That seems to me a little bit more robust. So don't know is the most frequent thing that people are going to do next. None is a popular response. Beyond that, people are using it to write questionnaires, and they are going to. They are using it to write proposals. They're using it for content marketing and blogs. They're using it for data analysis. They're using it for summarizing text, and they're using it for desk research, secondary research. So I'm just going to pick up on one question in the Q&A there. Who was this conducted with? This was an open invitation to everybody who gets the New MR newsletter and everybody who follows me in social media, which is something like about 10,000 people. So 10,000 people and 5,000 people on the newsletter may have seen the invitation. They may not as well. And of those, 268 replied. So we are talking about people connected with Ray's opinion. That's people connected with Ray, their opinion. There are various views about ChatGPT amongst that group of people. Views range from it's all hype to the world's already changed. This is it. We can all change. Our job's gone. This is the new thing. Nearly everybody else is somewhere in between those two. There are lots of concerns about inaccuracies and about biases. Everything is biased, but we don't know what the bias in ChatGPT is. We don't know what the bias in a system like Jasper is. We don't know what the biases are in systems like Bard are going to be. There are concerns that ChatGPT could help make the fraudulent responses to surveys even worse. And that's why we keep coming back to it. At the moment, it's a starting point rather than a finished product. Then we have some ethical issues. If we upload some open-ended comments to have them analyzed and summarized by ChatGPT, who owns that? Who will see it? Who might use it? If we generate content using ChatGPT, who owns it? Do we have to say ChatGPT wrote it? So if I ask it to write a blog on something, and I'm going to show you an example of doing that in a moment, do I own it? Do I have to say ChatGPT wrote it? If I edit it a little bit, do I then have to say ChatGPT wrote it? Can we be sure the information from ChatGPT is going to be accurate? 2 or 3 people have posted their experience of getting it to write Python code. Sometimes that Python code has got errors in. It will work, but not under some conditions. So you need to be a programmer to know whether the code that ChatGPT has written for you is robust or whether it's going to go wrong some of the time. And then we come back to this issue about what biases are in the data. So I asked ChatGPT, if I upload some text to ChatGPT, who can access the text and who owns the intellectual property? And it answered me, when you upload text to ChatGPT, it becomes part of the training data used to improve the language model. The text is processed anonymously, meaning that the identity of the user who uploaded the text is not stored or accessible. As for ownership of the intellectual property, any text you upload to ChatGPT is subject to OpenAI's terms and conditions, which state that OpenAI retains ownership of all intellectual property rights associated with the language model and its training data. However, OpenAI does not claim ownership of the content you upload, and any personal information is deleted from the uploaded data. So at the minimum, that data is now stored indefinitely. Your client's data would be stored indefinitely on that system. That should cause any of you to take a pause. I'm fairly comfortable uploading new MR research because I am the owner of it and I'm going to publish it and make it accessible anyway. But if my client was Unilever or Coca-Cola, I certainly wouldn't be uploading it at the moment. This is going to go through a lot of checks, enterprise versions, and systems going forward. So I'm going to show you a quick example of playing with ChatGPT, and I'm going to be looking at transport. So first question, I asked it, I need to conduct market research into the UK's public transport sector. What are the main forms of public transport in the UK? And it came up with this list. I'm not going to read everything, but buses, a description, trains, with their variety of trains that are available, underground or metro systems, listing cities beyond London, trams, listing some of the cities, taxis, ferries. That's quite interesting. If I was in a hurry, I might have forgotten ferries. They are used around the fringes. They are used across some of the rivers. Yet they should have been in there. Cycling and walking. It hasn't listed e-scooters, which is one that I would have remembered. But you can see why, as a starting point, that helps you get moving. And then I said, okay, I want to really explore public transport. So could you generate for me 10 personas? And so I'll just read one from the bottom. Nightlife Nathan. Nathan is a person who uses public transport to enjoy the nightlife in urban areas. He values services that operate late night and are safe and reliable. And so it's come up with 10 personas, and it's really quite good at doing this. Whether these personas reflect the real world, I don't know. They would need testing. But actually, the personas I see lots of marketing companies come up with have no more validity until they've gone through some sort of research process. I then asked it to write a short questionnaire using closed questions that would help allocate people to those 10 personas. And it came up with a set of questions. So what is your main reason for using public transport? How often do you use public transport? Which types of public transport do you use most often? We then have a poor question. How important is punctuality and reliability? Because most people actually don't know how important it is. That's why we use inferred importance. But it's not unusual for a market research agency to ask a question like that. Are you currently a student? Do you have children under the age of 18? Are you retired? Do you have a disability? Are you visiting the UK as a tourist? I think that's a really nice question that it's come up with there. It's not a question that I would see people asking all the time. And it depends on whether you're collecting this information face-to-face, online, or whatever. And do you prefer eco-friendly modes of transport? Is a bit of a leading question. An awful lot of people are going to say yes, irrespective of the choices they then make. So we've got a mixed bag there of questions. But again, you can see why that would be better than the average non-researcher who is using one of the DIY platforms. This is an article. When you download the slides, you'll be able to click and go to the original article. So this is quite a long article on the BBC about the cuts in expenditure on the high-speed train, HS2 in the UK. I asked it to summarize it, and it summarized it down. It's got all of the details from an article that was about 3 pages long. I then asked it to do a biased sort of thing. I said, please write a blog about why personas are a good tool for segmenting the users of public transport. You'll be able to read this on the download, so I won't read it all out, but it starts quite nicely. As a public transportation system is becoming increasingly complex and diverse, it's essential for transport planners and operators to understand users better. Then it starts talking about different personas, different users, making sure we don't leave people out. So let's have a look what else it goes. Transport planners identify gaps in the existing service, opportunities for innovation, and conclusions. However, talk about being a gun for hire, I then said, write a blog about why personas are a bad tool for segmenting the users of public transport. And it's really good. It comes back with lack of accuracy. Personas are fictional characters based on research and data analysis at best. Oversimplification of user behavior. Difficulty in keeping up with changing trends. And I love this one, potential for stereotyping and bias. So if we're trying to explore a topic, one idea that I throw out to you is you might say, ask ChatGPT to write you a statement in favor, ask it to write a statement against, and then contrast the two, and then look back at your data to get that alternative view about the information. So my main message to you is this is the biggest noise that has hit the research world for years, possibly in my working lifetime, back to about 1978, actually. There are things, that does not mean it's going to be the biggest thing that has happened, but the amount of interest and challenge and discussion that has happened in 100 days is way bigger than the information superhighway created in its first 100 days. It's way bigger than the mobile phone created in its first 100 days. It's way bigger than the personal computer created in its first 100 days. And I used all three of those in their early days. Its questionnaires, discussion guides, summaries are not perfect, but I would assert that they are better than about 25% of the output I see that is being sent to the panel companies for surveys, many of those from research companies. So it's certainly not the good stuff, but it's not as bad as some of the stuff that's currently being done and charged for. Beware of the limitations, errors, biases, problems caused by asking poor prompts. There is a massive difference in what you get out of it by asking better questions, by asking better prompts. But you need to embrace this change. It is coming. There are lots of other tools out there, and some more are coming immediately after those. So be looking at those. I use the word prompt. This is a book which I massively recommend. In the UK, it's about 20 quid. It's a digital version, and it's full of experiments that you can use and you can try. It's got lots of really sharp marketing savvy as well about why you would do things this way. It talks about the limitations of the information. So I really do recommend that that book. And these two guys, Richard Bowman and David Boyle, are doing webinars left, right, and center. So if you can get to see one of their webinars, I really recommend it. So just, I've now signed up to ChatGPT 4, and I have not noticed a difference between that and Chat 3.5. I see in the chat stream that Andrew thinks that the upload is bigger. It may well be bigger, but it's still less than the size of data that I'm looking at. You certainly won't be substituting this for Signal anytime soon with the sort of volumes you can handle. So last one, we're going to pull another question. After your experience to date and what you've heard today, are you going to be using ChatGPT? So the question from Legal, no, it didn't. Would it have been better if it had been? I think if the MRS had written it, would also have prefer not to answer as a code. So okay, the ticker seems to have stopped going up. So I will come back to that point, Alexandrina. We'll end the poll and we will share the results. So you should be able to see that. So we have one person who says no, which is, I think that's quite interesting. I suspect the number will end up being slightly larger. 15% don't knows. We're about 40% yes, but not for live projects. But nearly half the people attending this webinar, so 137 people, have said, yeah, we're going to use it, including for live projects. So I think that is interesting. I won't pass an opinion on that, but I am using it for live projects. So we're now into Q&A. Will these slides be sent to us after the talk? No, they will be available for you to reach. They do go into SlideShare, which means you need to register with SlideShare to be able to download them. If you really, really can't do that, then email me and I will send them to you anyway. But they will be available. They will, Thursday? They will be available by Monday. They might be available tomorrow. But certainly by Monday they're there. We'll put a note in social media and we will put a note in our newsletter to say where they are. Are we saying that we would contravene GDPR if we uploaded, say, interview transcripts? I think that what OpenAI are saying is they throw away the personal data. So if there is nothing in there that is personally identifiable, you would not be contravening GDPR. But you are trusting somebody else. So I would say at a minimum, you should be removing people's names, identifiers from the data before you upload it. But actually, you should be removing their names and their identifiers before you process it and you share it around inside the company. Next one. We thought it would be good for summarizing open-ended unstructured text, such as from support calls or community platforms, but we find that it doesn't work well. Might be better for short open-ended survey responses, but it really isn't a clustering tool to code themes. Anybody have success with ChatGPT? I have found it quite good, frankly, for taking chunks of text and saying, what are the main things that people are talking about in there? It doesn't correspond to volumes. So it will pick out the main topics in my experience that people are talking about, but it won't say 30% of people are talking about this and 40% are talking about this very reliably. What's your experience of using this for content analysis? I find that even with small samples of interview responses, the hallucinates themes rather than summarizing. No, I found it I used it a lot on this project, and I've used it on a couple of other new MR related projects as well, and in conjunction with our stuff with word clouds. And I've generally found it quite good. When I tried to put a lot more data in, it suddenly started hallucinating and talking about other topics. But generally, I found it was useful. As one of your main takeaways, you said this is a lot of noise. What needs to happen for us as an industry practitioner is ensure that it lands in a way that the organizations we work for and when talking to clients, it's great the tool makes us efficient in some things we do, but not really changing fundamentally what we do and why we exist. I think it is going to change fundamentally what we do and how we do it. So why do I say that? It's going to massively empower desk research. So much research that we have at the moment is not done particularly well. I really like Lucy AI, for example, because it has this really intelligent search through your own information and other information. So I think a lot less research is going to be done because of better desk research. And I think that we are going to find that very few people will be writing questionnaires in the future. I think that we will see the same well-proven questionnaires used more frequently, and discussion guides are going to draw upon the work of experts rather than undertrained juniors in the future. So I think a lot of things are going to change. One of the things that happened with the creation of the desktop computer and the portable recorder was that most qual researchers could become freelancers because all of a sudden the equipment was less. We have seen high-end statisticians become freelancers because of these sort of changes. We could see those sort of changes becoming a lot wider. Prompt is available. I don't know whether it's a book through thought. I haven't tried their APIs. I'm just running through the questions first, and then we can look back at the chat. ChatGPT is an awful name. Did you see any differences in the responses? Were there any differences by age? In a B2B study, I don't normally ask age or gender because I don't think it's a relevant demographic. I'm sure that there would be some differences, but people have already self-selected to be involved in the new MR ecosystem. So I think that I would introduce biases. Any thoughts on the implication for things like social listening? Yeah, it's going to boost social listening. These technologies are going to be used by the brand watchers and all those other companies that are doing that. So there's an option in terms of GDPR. You can run systems locally if you've got the ease. But I think, Paul, what has happened here with ChatGPT is suddenly it's not the cognoscenti who are using it. It's lots of people. And that is, I think, the fundamental difference between ChatGPT and lots of other similar systems. It's opened the door to so many people quickly. Can we trust it? No. Surveys for opinions, how our clients feel about it when using Chat. Not yet, but that's a really good point. What do clients think about it if ChatGPT? They probably think it should be cheaper and faster. How do I predict that DI survey research by non-research companies will be impacted by ChatGPT? A lot of it will become a lot better than it is now. If you've got no training in market research, survey question writing, then please get ChatGPT to write your surveys because they will be better than the ones you're doing now. If you're a really good market researcher, please don't use ChatGPT to write your surveys. I think that's where we are. Which aspects of a researcher's job do you think will be replaced? A lot of the clerical functions, cut, paste, copy, writing simple summaries, all of those sorts of bits and pieces, testing surveys, writing discussion guides, all of those in the near future. So there's a question in here about what about analyzing results? It's going to move in that direction. As the ability to look at how data sets are looked at and analyzed, then clearly these conversational AIs are going to be able to come up with reports. For many, many years, press reporting has included automated AI taking business reports and writing standardized outputs. So that is, it's not been worth anybody's while to do that in the market research industry to the same extent. We're going to see more of that. Do we think it will replace most of the work we currently do as qualitative researchers? I think it will replace some. Now I'm going to back up on that. I think it's going to make the analysis much, much better because I don't think we do enough analysis. So I was going to say it's going to replace a lot of the analysis. No, it's going to make the analysis a lot better. The data collection where you go and spend time talking to somebody isn't quickly going to be replaced by ChatGPT. So all that side of talking to people and traveling there and thinking about it, those are going to be the same, but the analysis is probably going to be a lot better of qualitative. Will this benefit independent small MR firms more than the large established ones? No, it will benefit the small independents enormously, but people like Ben Page running Ipsos are both clever and they have deep pockets. So they will accumulate things that work well. So we will see Kantar and Ipsos and these sort of companies really proactively picking up the best of these things. I don't think that's a problem. If you are a small or medium size, there's a lot of advantages here, but it's not going to hurt the big guys. So if you Google prompt, no, it can't be purchased. You buy it directly from prompt. So Google prompt, the book prompt, and it will come up. Will it not be disastrous for training junior researchers? I think things like ChatGPT and conversational AI are a great method of training. I'm doing quite a lot of learning at the moment. I'm trying to learn British Sign Language. I would love a conversational AI that talked to me and recognized my sign language and said, actually, that's not a very clear sign, Ray. Can you make it clearer whether it's saying thank you or please? So I think there's a fantastic opportunity for training with all of these things. So I'm going to stop looking at the Q&A tool and just look at the chat tool after this last one. Should we all find new careers? No, I love this industry. And anyway, I've just been elected president of it for 2 years, so please stay. What factors make you believe it could do analysis effectively? I found that its inaccuracy has been a major barrier, especially with large qual data sets. Large qual data sets, yes. I use it as with small sets of information. I'm using it as a starting point. And so far, I have never run ChatGPT and not also read the text and not also generated a word cloud with Word Cloud Plus. So at the moment, I'm using 3 sets of information, and it is getting there. For the low-hanging fruit, it will work pretty well on bigger data sets, and it is going to get better. It's going to be better in 100 days than it is now. It's going to have more competitors in 100 days than it has now. So I'm switching across now to look at the chat. So there's also a high proportion of information online that's not of human origin. Do we think this will increase in a problematic way? Yes, it will increase. I don't know whether it's problematic. Get ChatGPT to respond to your surveys and you'll get an infinite supply of articulate, correctly spelled verbatims. I think there are some real issues. People have been using bots to gather data for a while, and I've wondered about how many times bots are going to interview bots. And I think that is something we want to go forward. In terms of generating test interviews, I have used AI bots as my respondents so that I can test software, so that I can test questionnaires. There is a role for them within that. Do you really think it'll be able to do high quality qualitative analysis? Not in the next 5 years. I think that it will do good qualitative analysis. I think it will do easy stuff. It will tell us why people are buying the red bottle instead of the blue bottle, if it's not to do with their inner motivations. The best qual will still knock socks off it. The best qual is expensive. People do not always need the best product. I never fly first class on aeroplanes. I believe, from what people tell me, it's better, but I can't afford it. So I fly economy, or if I'm a little bit lucky, premium economy, or if the client is paying, business. And I think it's going to be like that with this. A lot of good qualitative is going to be done AI assisted. There was a lovely paper by North Star, I think it was a few years ago, where they did 3 side-by-side projects. One was all automated, one was people and computers, and one was just people. And they then asked the client which ones worked best for the client, and the integrated one worked best. And one of the reasons it worked best was it wasn't too clever. It wasn't as deep and esoteric as the entirely human one was. You can ask it for the sentiment of text. Now the accuracy is another thing. Yeah, people disagree about the sentiment of text. I send an email to somebody thinking it's perfectly fine. They take umbrage at it. So that is something that's going forward. I think the issue is cost. It's a cheap tool, same way that web surveys won because they're cheap. Yeah, web surveys won because they were fast and cheap. They were less good. They are probably still less good, but they were much faster and much cheaper. Interesting choice of language by OpenAI to characterize lying as hallucinating. Yes. And I don't think we should let them get away with hallucinating. I think we should probably say lying, because it's done plausibly in a way that's likely to make you believe it's correct. Whereas hallucinating is where you're fooling yourself, I think. These tools will make it very easy for fake respondents to get into surveys. Yes, and I think that is a real issue. you're probably already getting 20 to 30% fake surveys in your online research already. So we're getting to a tipping point. However, all of the panel companies are using AI to try to spot the problems. The panel companies are doing more in that area than anybody else is. Okay, I can't scroll back any further. So if you've got a really good point, which has not been answered or discussed, do you want to stick it in now into the chat stream? Yeah, I think that is true. It's not a lie if you believe it. But because of the way the stochastic parrot works, it does not believe what it's saying. It's simply saying this is the most probable answer. So that's quite an interesting thing, because there are lots and lots of things that most people say which probably aren't correct. And if you have a language model that replicates what most people say, it's not going to be a tool for correct. That genius. So I'm just going to try to freeze my screen on the question here from Justin. Isn't it concerning for the MR industry that non-research clients can just take 10 questions you produced on ChatGPT and ask them without knowing how to analyze them? They are currently doing that with all of the fantastic DIY platforms. There are probably 1,000 survey platforms they could choose at the moment. They are using these already, and they're putting atrocious questions in. The direction of travel with things like ChatGPT is it's going to make those slightly better. I will find out the paper that did that contrast. And now I think about it, it might have been Skim. It was Susan Bold who did the research, and I'm not sure whether she was at North Star at the time or at Skim. But if you Google that, then you should see it. And I'm pretty sure it was an SMR paper. So if you go into ANA, you should be able to find it there. What kinds of research do we want to find low probability? Wonder what kinds of research where we want to find low probability answers. Not sure what that means, Robert, if you want to clarify. Yes, that paper by Stephen Wolfram is very good. How do I plan to use ChatGPT in my work? So I'm trying to write various books about my running and things like that. So I'm going to try to use it more there. I use it for checking my text. So I write blogs and I then say to ChatGPT, can we improve that? I'm beginning to use it to summarize articles. For my own open-ended stuff, I ask it to summarize that. As I say, so far, I've been using 3 approaches. I've been using my word cloud, I've asked ChatGPT to summarize it, and I've read it. And then I get 3 views, and hopefully I'm learning the same sorts of things when I do that. When we want outliers, we can ask for, yes, I think if you ask ChatGPT what would outliers think about that, it's going to be able to pick that up, because that's the sort of thing that does exist in conversation. So things that are talked about are the things that it can find through. How do you see the impact of ChatGPT across other business sectors? Well, one of the interesting ones that we can see that's just outside of our sector in the CX space is the difference between service and DIY is going to blur. Because at the moment, you can go to a call center to get some help or advice, or you can do it yourself. But with things like ChatGPT, you can have a much more real conversation with people. You can think about ChatGPT as assisted shopping and in those sorts of areas. I can see it being used by salespeople all the time to get a better way of targeting you through lots and lots of different sort of places. Perhaps profiles you coming in so that they get a better sense of which words to use with you, where they should try to trade you up on a sale and these sort of things. I can see it being used a lot in training and education. not necessarily for children first, I think more likely for adults, but I think being used a lot there. We are probably going to see it used a lot in the processing of forms, applications, asylum seekers, refugees, court cases, the analysis of people's mobile phones. So when you arrest somebody, they normally take their mobile phone off them, and there's megabytes of data. Things like conversational AI saying, is there anything in there that's worrying? Using AI to be able to clean things up, to say, we do not want anything that relates to child pornography. We do not want anything that advocates terrorism. Being able to go through and do those cleaning up, that is potential. However, in one country, they may say any criticism of the government is terrorism and clean that up. And in another country, they may say any promotion of LGBT rights is something that needs clearing out. So the power that we give those people who create these clearing out systems could be really worrying. So instead of using it to write your first draft of a discussion guide, could you do yours and ask it if it can be improved? I think that would be a great thing to do, because I think that you would almost always find something that you had forgotten. So when I knocked together that survey questionnaire earlier, I'm pretty sure that my first draft wouldn't have had ferries. And it might well have picked that up. So if I pick up a discussion guide, it might well look at that and say, this is a bit too ambiguous, or this is gendered language that you're using. Do you want to change it? So somebody had a good presentation by relevance.ai. I've not seen that yet, but it's great to hear. So yeah, this is a great point, Annie Karen. If we write a discussion guide, and we go into it goes into the training guide. Do we want that to happen? And except where I'm doing something very bespoke for a Coca-Cola or a Texas Instruments or something like that, where I'm a bit concerned about privacy and so on. But for all of my stuff, I put it into books for people to learn from. I write it on the internet. So I would expect a fair amount of my stuff is already in the training database for ChatGPT. So I would be very happy for my stuff to be uploaded. And of course, the training may well say, oh, you know what, Ray's stuff is rubbish. We're going to go more towards that. I think that is good, but not everybody wants to do that. Has anybody asked ChatGPT whether the government's use of language relating to immigration was reminiscent of? It's not September 9, 2021, unfortunately. Have to leave for another webinar now. Cover in the beginning, but congratulations on being elected president. Thank you, Lee. So I think we have managed to wear out all of the questions. We still have a phenomenal 222 people logged in, which is really rewarding. I hope you found that useful. The recording will be available and the slides will be available. The report that I wrote is already up on the website. It's lovely old-fashioned style. It's even got the questionnaire at the end of the document in the treasure chest. So please all be well.